Today I'm taking a look at the new game from Off the Page Games that is Core of Discovery, set in the world of Manifest Destiny. Off the Page Games, all their games revolve around comic book series, and this one is no different. The Manifest Destiny comic is about Lewis and Clark exploring in the 1800s, but they encounter some pretty gnarly things along the way, including giant monsters that they have to battle. So in this game, you're going to be exploring on a giant map. It is a logic and deduction game, also a lot of resource management going on as well. This is a review copy, so thanks to Off the Page Games for providing this copy for me to take a look at. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the game plays, then I'll come back and share with you some of my likes and dislikes for Core of Discovery. So here we have the game set up. This is a training mission for the game. So normally when you are playing, you would have a full 7x7 grid here that you are exploring, as this is a deduction style game, logic game, and also resource management, a big theme in this game too. But for the training mission, it's 5x5. I will be revealing some of these tokens and spaces in this video, so if you want absolutely no spoilers, then skip ahead. But again, this is a training mission and is meant to teach you the game. There are two chapters that come in the game. There is the first chapter, which is fauna, and the second chapter, which is flora, and I'll explain those a little bit more later on in the video. So in this game, you are trying to complete a certain goal for each particular map. In this game, the goal is to survive 2 full days, and we ignore the night conditions for the training mission. Just makes it a little bit easier. So over here on this board, we've got our challenges that we are trying to complete. Our first challenge is approach the arch. We're basically just trying to find some wood here, and if we gain wood, when it comes time to solve this challenge, then we would get food for accomplishing that. The little sun icons up in the corner are how many turns you have basically to accomplish that challenge. So we have 5 turns here to accomplish that challenge. If we fail the challenge, we also get food, but we have to lose a water. Not great, since we only have 3 water in this training game. Normally you would have 8. And would fill it up to there. You also have a character that has a character-specific ability. In the training game, you have to use Lewis for the training mission. And his ability is if you gain a resource or water, you can gain 2 of it instead, but you have to decide on that before you flip your tile over. You also have gear that you will be using. In the solo game, you have usually 3 pieces of gear. For the training mission, you have 1, and that is your compass. You also notice that we have a monster out here on the map. It is a Minotaur. And if we wanted to explore in any of these spaces or any of these spaces, we would have to pay 1 water or resource to be able to do that. We also have a Kill Minotaur card up here, where if we have fire and can discard a rock, we can kill that Minotaur and get it off the board and make it easier to explore. So again, for the training mission, we're just trying to survive 2 full days. You will also know on each map where the rock peak is. In this particular map, it's on D6. So you place a rock token there, and you know that that is a rock resource in that particular space. You also have this card. The pages are bigger for the 2 chapters in the game, which I'll show you here again at the end of this explanation. So in the training mission, you can see that rocks are all connected. They're not on the edge, and they are unpassable. If you uncover a rock, you cannot travel through that space. You have to approach it from a different side. You can see water is going to be next to wood. You can also see if there is a vine, it is going to be in a column with a rock. So you know that this column has a rock in it, so there will also be a vine in that column somewhere. For wood, there's 1 per row and 1 per column. A mud is going to be next to a water and a rock. And this is a hill. So in this particular map, a hill is going to tell us how many water in that particular row and that particular column, and you get another turn. You don't have to use a sun token to place it on the board over here. You just get to go again. So those are all the resources here in the training mission. There are other resources that come in the game, but you've got 5 for the training mission. So how does this whole thing work? Well, you're basically just going to be exploring spaces and flipping those over and seeing what is underneath. So you start this particular map in column 7. So you could pick any of these spaces to start on. Now, we know a few things. We know that rocks are all connected and they're not on the edge of the board. So this will not be a rock. None of these will be rocks, but it's likely that there's probably a rock here, here, or here. So maybe we want to stay away from that particular area. So maybe you would go down here in the corner. You flip this over, and it is a water. So you just take the sun token, and you put it over here on this particular board, and you gain a water, and you place it on your supply board here. And then that's that turn. You now just go again. So we know that there's wood next to water, and we're trying to find wood for this first particular challenge. So we know that it's got to be in one of these two spaces. Let's go ahead and go here and see what's there. That is indeed a wood. So again, you just put the token over there. You take the wood and you place it in your backpack. That's one thing I did not explain is the backpack. You can carry 4 resources just fine, but when you finish a challenge card, you have to check and see if you are fatigued. So if you have more than 4 resources at that particular time, you have to spend a water, and the board will also let you know that as well when you resolve these challenges. So we've got our first particular resource that we need to solve this challenge when we get there. Now, let's look at the next challenge and see what else we're trying to find. We're also trying to find another wood, a rock, and a water. Well, again, we know that wood is going to be next to water, so we can assume most likely that this is going to be another wood token. Let's flip it over and see. It is actually a mud, so I was wrong there, but we will need mud at some point. So we can go ahead and take it and put it right here. Now, what do we know from revealing that space as mud? Well, we know mud is always next to water and a rock. So we know that we already have revealed our water. We know this has to be a rock because rocks cannot be on the edge of the board, but they are all connected. So we would take one of these tokens and they're double-sided. So if you're thinking, I think that might be it, but I'm not 100% sure, you can put it on this side. If you're confident, you could put it on that side and know that that space is a rock. And we will need a rock at some point. In fact, we'll need 2 of them, so that's good to know where they are. And we're still looking possibly for another wood. Let's go up here and see what's up here. Again, the rules for exploration, or you just have to explore adjacent to any space that you have already explored. You can't go diagonally. Pretty standard there. So let's see what's up here. We have another mud. So that's next to a rock, obviously. And so we know that this space is likely a water. I'm not 100% confident, but I'm feeling pretty confident that that is a water, which means one of these 2 spaces would be wood. Now, when we explored this space, we also should have, I forgot to do this, we should have paid a water because we explored in the same row as the monster. So we would get rid of a water there. Now we'll go up here. This is likely a water again, as I said, just showing you. And it is, so we'll put that on our board here. And now we have 5 of these sun tokens. So now we will resolve this challenge. So we have to spend a wood. We have a wood, so we're good. We pass the challenge. We're going to gain a food for doing that. And we take this off the board and just set it over here. You don't reveal new challenges until the next day. Makes the game a little bit harder because you only know so many things in terms of what is coming up. Now, at the end of the day, once we get through all of these challenges, you have to feed your troops. So you have to have food. If you pass, you survive and you proceed to night. If you fail, you starve and you lose the game. So food is very important in this game as well. So now we have 2 turns basically to find a rock and a wood. Well, we know there's rocks on these 2 spaces, so we can flip one of those over. Let's go ahead and flip this over right now. That was a rock, and so we've collected a rock and put that right there. And then we're trying to find a wood. We know it is likely on one of these 2 spaces. We're going to have to just kind of take a gamble. I'm going to assume maybe it's here because a rock might be there because rocks are connected. Let's see. And that was a wood. So now we've got those 2. And we're technically fatigued right now, but we're okay because we're going to spend these resources while we resolve the challenge. So we would take these 3 resources here, take them off, stack them back up, take this off, this challenge comes off the board. Nothing for passing this challenge. In fact, a lot of times you won't get anything for passing. You're just trying to stay alive and continuing to explore. So there's an overview of how the game works in terms of the training mission. Now, there are also 2 chapters, as I mentioned, to this game, Flora and Fauna. So I'm not going to show you the maps for those chapters, but I am going to show you the reference boards so you can get an idea of what you're doing in those 2 chapters. So here is the reference board for Fauna. And on the Fauna maps, your goal is to kill 3 Minotaurs. So instead of just one of these being out here, there might be multiples of these out here at a time, and you'll have to reveal these Kill Minotaur cards to try and figure out how you can kill the Minotaurs, and that's how you succeed. Once you kill 3 Minotaurs, immediately the game is over. You can see you have some more resources that you're dealing with. You have skull tokens on the Fauna maps. You have these shelter tokens, which allow you to carry more resources and not be fatigued. You have tippies, which are going to let you trade resources or water. All very helpful things. So that is what you are doing on the Fauna maps. And again, you can see here how you explore, and then you have your free actions. You can use your character's ability, your gear cards. We didn't have threat cards set up out here, but those are going to be these cards right here, where you can remove one of those if you have the requirements necessary. Build a shelter. You can build a fire right here with using 2 wood or 2 rocks. You can backtrack, and you can also discard a resource token if you have too many in your supply right there. So that's the Fauna maps. Again, you're trying to kill 3 Minotaurs. The Flora maps are more difficult. They are a step up in complexity. And you are trying to find and defeat the giant hive mind Flora with Greek fire. So first you have to go and grab this Greek fire token that will be placed out on the board somewhere. You'll know when it is when you start, but normally you'll start pretty far from it on the map. And you also have these flora terrains that you have to deal with, and you have to solve these flora terrains. Otherwise, that's not going to go well for you. You're going to lose resources and possibly lose your little people as well. For that particular map, you also have these little meeples here that you will be using. And if you ever run out of all of those, then you fail that map. You're also going to have these cards where you are trying to find particular resources. So once you find these resources, you advance along this track. You would have these set up down here like this. And then you would flip these cards over and see what resources you need to defeat the giant hive mind Flora. So that's a little bit of what's going on in that particular map sequence for the Flora maps. There's also, and I'm going to do a separate video on this, the Insecta expansion. So in this, you are trying to deal with giant insects. And there are 4 expansions that are going to be available for this game. This is the first one. And so I'll be taking a look at this in a separate video. But there's, again, the 2 chapters that come with the game, the flora and the fauna, the training missions. There's also more maps you can download and print out on the publisher's website as well if you want to play even more maps. So lots of content for this game. So now that you've seen how it plays, let me go back and tell you my likes and dislikes for Core of Discovery. So you've seen how the game plays. Now I'll share with you some of my likes and dislikes for Core of Discovery. My first big like for this game, coming from a solo perspective, is that I feel like the game works great at 1 player. It can play up to 4, and I could see how that would be fun if you have multiple people around the table. You're trying to figure out where you're going to go to next. You're all trying to play cooperatively to get the challenges accomplished. But it works great solo as well. Now, all the decisions are left up to you. You only have your brain to try and figure out those, logic and deduction things that you're dealing with throughout the course of the game. But it is a fantastic game for just 1 player. So I commend the designers here in Off the Page Games. They've done a great job at making this a great solo game without needing to add in, additional components or an additional rule set or anything like that. The only thing that changes for the solo game is you get some more gear cards to help you out along the way. But other than that, everything is completely the same. So I love that from the solo perspective. I also enjoy the deduction and logic in this game a ton. I think it is challenging without being so challenging that you just want to quit and put the game up. There are times when you will lose this game for sure. There are also times when you're going to win the game. And for me, when I won the game, it was on like the last or second to last turn, collecting the resource or the item that I needed to be able to accomplish the goal for that particular map. So I feel like they've done a really good job here at giving you enough clues of where things are going to be at on the board, and not so many that it feels really, really easy to find those spaces. But on the flip side, not so challenging that you can at least have a general idea of where something might be, especially if you really think about it. And that's one thing that I love about this game is you have to kind of sit there and just think, and you'll just sit there, looking at that map for maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes before you flip over another tile, another token to figure out what that space is, because you're going through that reference board and you're saying, okay, well, if that's a rock, then I know that might be a rock, or there's a wood there, so there might be a water next to it, or I know that food is diagonal from this space, so where might that possibly be based on what I've already revealed? All of that stuff is really well done, and it all works really well. And I commend the designers as well for making sure that all the maps make sense and that the logic feel and the deduction feels really good, again, without being super duper challenging that is just to the point of annoying. I feel like there's a really good balance here. I also like the supply board, how everything's just kind of right there in front of you. This game doesn't have a ton of components that you have to set up, and it doesn't take up a ton of space. So I like how they've organized the supply board. They've got your backpack on there for keeping all your resources. Your challenges go on there. If you build fire, you put it on there. Your shelter token is on there. Just a really well done use of space on that board that you're going to set up every game, but everything you need is right there. They could have very easily said, make a pile of this and make a pile of this and keep this over here and all this stuff, but no, it's just all right there. And so when you're looking at that board, very quickly at a glance what resources you have, how much water you have, what challenges you're trying to do. All of that is really well done for this game. Also, the art and the graphic design are fantastic in this game. All of the tokens are really well done. Those sun tokens fit into the board really, really nicely, and they look really cool too. Also, the maps are really well done. It's very clear to tell which resources are on which particular spaces. Both chapters have kind of their own feel to them, the flora and the fauna, and I'll talk about those more in a second. But overall, I know they're going off of a comic book here, so they have a little bit of a basis to go off of, or a base level, but they've still done a really nice job incorporating that art into a board game. So let's talk a little bit about the chapters, flora and fauna. The first chapter is fauna, and that is the easier chapter. I felt like my games when I was playing the fauna chapter were not quite as tough as the flora chapter. There's definitely a step up in difficulty when you play those flora maps. So I think they've done a good job in the rule book for the most part for telling you to start with the training mission and then move on to the flora and then move on to the fauna. I think that's a nice progression there, because if you start with the fauna, it's going to be really, really difficult, and you need to have some experience playing the game first before you're really ready to take on those maps so you can be as efficient as possible. But I like how they've structured it here. So with the 2 chapters, there's 10 maps in each chapter, and that feels like a significant amount of gameplay. Even if you play through all 10 maps for both of those chapters, you're probably not going to remember where stuff is on the board right down to the exact space. So you can replay those maps, especially if a couple of weeks or months go by and you pull this out again and you want to play those maps again. They also have more maps on their website that you can download as well to keep the game fresh and to continue playing it. But there's a really nice amount of content in this game, and I really like the 2 chapters, what you're doing. The 1 chapter and the flora chapter, you're trying to kill those minotaurs, and you have to figure out ways to be able to kill them. And then they're also affecting where you can go on the map and on revealing those tokens, because you're gonna have to pay a resource or a water every time you explore a space that's in a row or a column as a monster. And then in the other chapter, in the fauna chapter, that's really tough because you're trying to gather the resources you need, advance along that track that you have set up kind of at the bottom of your map board to try and achieve that goal. So I really enjoyed both chapters here. They felt different, obviously similar in terms of gameplay, but different in terms of what you were doing and your strategy and how you might approach each chapter without having a ton of significant rules overhead for each particular chapter. Also, the resource management in this game is a really fun and exciting aspect. It's more obviously about the logic and the deduction and the exploring of the map, but resource management is really, really important in this game. You're going to be collecting resources, and sometimes you're going to have too many resources. So you have to decide, do I want to become fatigued and spend a water? Or do I want to give up a resource? And, I might not explore that later on. There's only so many of those out there on the board. What do I do? So that's a really nice push-pull there where you're trying to figure out what the best situation might be for that particular map that you are playing and which challenges you have ahead of you. Also, the water tokens. You start the game with 8 water, and that feels like a lot of water, but that runs out pretty quickly, and then you have to get really, really, detailed with how you're going to use that water and when you're going to spend it, and if you're going to fail a particular challenge because you don't have the resources you need. Normally, if you fail a challenge, you're going to have to pay water for that challenge, and if you can't pay all of the water for that challenge, whether you pass or fail, then you lose the game. So water is the most crucial resource in the game, and again, they start you out with 8, which feels like a good number. You can only go up to 10 max, but as you spin those, things get really, really tight, which creates some really important decisions that you have to make later in the game. And this whole game is really about decisions in terms of where you're exploring, which resources you're going to spend. Are you going to go, in a row or column with a monster and spend a water? Are you going to build fire or spend other resources? Are you going to put a shelter down so that you can carry more stuff? Or are you not going to put a shelter down to be able to save those resources? So all of that comes into play throughout the course of the game. I really, really enjoyed this game. I loved the exploring aspect of the game and just really the whole package here. I did have just a few dislikes, though, that I wanted to address just really quickly before I give my score. So one of my main dislikes is that the game comes with a little white piece of paper that you slide in front of the map to get it into the map board, which basically has a hole in it that you slide the map and the divider down into. I felt that was a little difficult at times to get it in there without revealing the spaces on the map. That was just kind of difficult for me to be able to do that. I eventually got it to where I could be pretty good and slide it in there pretty well, but that was a little bit of a frustration factor for me early in this game, just from a usability standpoint. So I would say if you do pick up this game and if you do play it, just be really careful when you're putting those maps in there, because obviously if you don't have that piece of paper and the divider in there well enough, then you're going to reveal spaces on the map, and then you're not, you're going to have to get a different map out because you've seen kind of where stuff is. So that was just one dislike I had. And then the other dislike I had is just the rule book. It feels like it's set up maybe not in the best way. I totally understand what they're trying to go for here, where they have all the rules for the game in the front of the rule book and then the chapter specific rules at the back. But when you get the game, you're going to be setting up that training mission most likely, and those rules are in the back of the rule book, whereas the rest of the setup rules are in the front of the rule book. So you're constantly having to flip back and forth to say, okay, I need to set this up, but what do I need to do specific for the training mission? And then later on, when you play the other chapters, it's kind of going to be that same way. It's going to tell you follow standard setup rules, but then do the chapter specific ones, which again are just in the front and the back of the rule book. So I would have liked to see maybe if they had put those setup rules just all bunched together in the front of the rule book for the 3 chapters, then they could have had the main rules for the game and then maybe the chapter specific rules after that. But overall, a really, really fun deduction and logic game. The sense of exploration is there for sure. The resource management is a lot of fun. It works great at one player. The games don't take too long either. They're usually like 30 to 40 minutes for a solo player, which feels, the perfect length for this game. There's not a ton of setup either. This works great for one player. And so I'm going to give Core of Discovery a 9 out of 10. I really, really enjoy this as a deduction style game. I will definitely be playing it more, exploring more of those maps, and the challenge to try and, beat the game is always there. and it feels really good and really rewarding when you are able to accomplish the goals on the particular map that you are playing. You're going to fail a lot, which I'm okay with, because when you do win, again, it feels really good, and the game is not so challenging that it feels like, you know, you were completely out of reach from solving a particular map and getting those resources that you need. So 9 out of 10 for me for Core of Discovery. I do have the Insecta expansion. I'm going to be looking at that and doing another video separately on that expansion, so stay tuned for that. And if you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe. That definitely helps the channel out. I've got lots of other videos on my channel for you to check out, lots of solo reviews, lists, other things as well. Until next time, I'm Jared. You've been checking out Specifically Solo.